And there's a famous quote from the head of Pixar that says, "I'm interested in a time when art challenges technology and technology inspires art." And I think that application really shows that we're at that intersection of events and the combination of art and technology. And I think that's what you see here in Bologna happening a lot. My name is Neal, and I run and work with the Bologna Fair on the Bologna Digital Media Hall, which is a whole hall this year. So do come to Hall 32 from tomorrow. We've expanded to a whole hall. You'll find lots of talks for 3 days, including Warren, who's back on the program at 10. But today we're focusing on the State of the App panel, which is an annual sort of gathering on what's going on in the app world, and we have a whole a lot of different developers who are working in the kids app space with different opinions, but I think we're going to be covering very similar ground. I think what we want to look at is really quick review of what was around, let's say in 2015, and what's coming new, or some of the trends in 2016. I want to quickly touch on some aspects of financial aspects, sales and revenue, and also looking at hardware, because we're seeing a lot of different hardware resources coming out, different screens, different tools, which may or may not influence developers to grab hold of them. So I don't know if we can, Ron, can we put up the first slide?
Yep.
Valérie, I think you prepared a slide to get the top gold star mark from all the panelists. But Valérie, I think we could work through that slide because it kind of looks at a kind of quick review, which I think most people would agree with. But perhaps we could start with you just sort of talking us through it, and then others, if you can comment on where you are. In fact, that's Verena. Can we start with Valérie and then we go to Verena?
Of course, sorry.
In fact, no, it's my mistake, because I thought only Valérie had done a slide, but actually Verena was the first in, so...
Oh, so you get the golden star.
So you get the golden star as well.
Kate,
Did you do your homework?
Okay.
I totally didn't. I didn't do my homework either.
But mine are not as nice as Verena's.
Yours was in Pinot, right?
You didn't, well, it's fairly easy what I wrote on mine. I think I remember.
I concentrated on the design this year. Last year I concentrated on the content, and then Paolo from Apple came and says, your slides, they look crap.
Well, okay, so don't show mine,
So mine are just about design this.
Too late.
Right, so I did 2 slides, one that says what's the same as last year, and then what's fairly new. And basically, so we as developers, and this is the Edoki Academy point of view, of course, have always the same issues, discoverability. We all know there are a lot of great apps out there, but if your app is not featured on the App Store, it's very, very difficult for people to find it unless you have very specific keywords. But even like the Chomp app, which is a great app, if it's not featured, who would look for an app like that? So discoverability, and we get featured regularly on the App Store, but not a lot on Google Play, and that makes a huge difference for us in terms of sales, since we're going to talk about sales. Competition, every year we say it's getting harder and harder, a lot more people on the market, so, and there is sloppy work, but there's a lot of high quality work, so competition is always there and getting more and more difficult. Physical toys, they started coming in late 2014, early 2015, so Osmo, Tigli, and Robotic, who are here today. So physical toys that interact with the iPad or iPhone, an interesting trend. And then monetization, subscription models are coming in, but not as quickly as one would have thought compared to last year, or anyway in our space. I'm not seeing, although it's difficult unless you download the app, because it's a free app with in-app purchase, basically the subscription model. So unless you actually go in and look for the pricing, you can't see it from outside. So this is what's similar, and then what the new. So for us, in the past year, Google Play has really invested in getting human interface for us developers. So we actually have someone that we talk to, and so we believe that this, we hope it's going to make a change in the Google Play world. And then we saw Apple TV and Apple Watch come along. To be honest, Apple Watch, we've developed things for it, but it's really a gimmick. Really a gimmick. Apple TV, very interesting. We developed an Apple TV app only, and it's working quite well. And then our new apps, we build extensions for Apple TV on. And then schools, which for us in the educational world is an important market. Well, Apple has launched CloudKit, so a way for all the devices to be connected, and so it's not one child doesn't have to use the same device to follow his progression. So that's a huge breakthrough. And then the user age, it keeps continuously dropping. What I mean by that is that children use general apps or adult apps from a younger age every year, it seems to us. So that we're building children-specific apps, but the age seems to be dropping every year. That's my 2 cents.
Can we just can we flip back to the last screen? Kate, would you have anything to add, or from your perspective on the?
I'm writing the slides as we speak.
You're writing them?
Yes.
Are you going to hold them up, and can we do it old style?
Old style. I guess I think that, I mean, all of the things that Valérie said felt very familiar, but I would say I think there's an increasing almost conflict between ethics and monetization. I'm seeing that, I think, more and more, particularly in the context of those subscription models and the invisibility of pricing and what you're kind of getting yourself into. While the challenge of paid apps continues to be enormous. So I think that there can be quite a difficulty between making this a sustainable business on the one hand and exploring those new financial models. So I think that's one thing I'd say. Valérie talked about physical toys. I'm a book publisher as well as an app creator. And I would say that one of the things we've really seen in the last year particularly, but it does build on a bit of a trend, is a kind of renaissance of physical books, which is cheering for those of us who are also engaged in physical books. And we had in the UK and in the US the strongest year for children's book sales since records began in terms of sales out to consumers as tracked by Nielsen. So I'd say that physicality is really interesting. And unlike the physical toys that Valérie was talking about, these are physical books that really are utterly disconnected from digital phenomena of any kind. Having said that, I think that physical books that do introduce a kind of connection into a digital world are doing quite well. So we've seen a big increase, sort of acceleration of downloads of our audio books that we put a QR code. How old school? A QR code in the inside front cover of all of our paperback picture books that delivers a free enhanced audio reading of our picture books, and we've seen real takeoff of that in the course of last year, and we're experimenting with some web-linked books for 2016 and 2017. I was so pleased to see the winner this year had some text in it of the Bologna Prize. Massive thrill for me because it's something I bang on about all the time. This had some story. I thought it was very interesting that in Woo the text was very separate from the interaction, and that's not what we tried to do at Nosy Pro, but there was some text. I guess in the digital context, for all sorts of market reasons, we're not seeing, I feel, certainly outside the US, books that are digital. I think it's very hard for us to find ways of introducing reading in its traditional sense, decoding text or supporting text being decoded in any sort of a place. So I think that's interesting. And I think that we are seeing, there were some marvellous exceptions here, and I thought it was very interesting when Axel was talking about Woo Woo that he'd had some resistance to the look of the pig butterfly because it kind of didn't look like app artwork, and I think that we're seeing a massification of app artwork, and a lot of it's pretty unexciting, and I think it's very interesting to see somebody like Axel try to push those boundaries, and I guess we're trying to tread a middle ground. And I think that some of the art in apps, the Sego stuff, Toka stuff, I think is terrific. It does look like app artwork, but we're seeing a lot of stuff that's really done, as I always say, by a bloke in underpants in Basingstoke. That's really just not fabulous. So those were my 2 minutes. That's what I would have said if I'd done slides.
If you want to chime in at that point?
Yeah, sure. So I guess echoing Valerie's lovely slides, not having my own.
Well, we're waiting for the lovely slide, which is coming at the end of Verena, so we...
Yeah, I think you've undersold your slides. I think it has continued to be a challenging market. Everybody's still waiting to see what changes, what suddenly makes it better able to monetize, as you say, in an ethical way. We do a lot of, I think Nintendo phrased it quite well in their recent app, free to start. Free to start content whereby, somebody downloads the initial app, but we'll always just go with a single in-app purchase. It's never about selling magical donuts or whatever it might be to kids, which I have a real issue with. Paid does continue to be a challenge, but we found with our free to start, we've actually our downloads are up 10 times year on year.
What can you just
say
what free to start is exactly?
So it's effectively you're selling somebody somebody can download your app for free. They maybe can play the first chapter or the first few levels. But then to continue the experience, they must unlock. For something like My Very Hungry Caterpillar, we've actually made it so that the kid can go all the way from hatching an egg right the way through to feeding the caterpillar and getting a butterfly and getting multiple butterflies. But what they purchase then is effectively enhanced toys that can be played with again as a single purchase. Does that make sense?
I'm really interested to hear you say that, because certainly at the beginning, and kind of ages ago, 2011 even, in 2011, our first apps we did as light versions, and then we had an upsell opportunity. Our conversion rate was really poor, so I'm really interested to know whether that's working for you.
Conversion rate depends. We tend to find we get pretty good conversion rate on iOS. Depends on the app. Some of our apps have had conversion rate as high as 18%, but unfortunately they're the less downloaded apps. But in general, we don't dip below about 4.5%. So we're doing 10 times the number of downloads we did a year ago, and like for example in December we did 1.5 million downloads. Versus December 2014, where we just did 100,000 downloads. So, and that was with a similar mix of branded content and original IP. So, we have found that there's definitely there's something working about free. Obviously, subscription has gobbled up a lot of kids' app revenue. I mean, basically, I think parents are subscribing to maybe something like Play Kids, and they see, right, that's my $5.99 a month app budget, you're not getting anything else. So I think there's a finite amount of money in the kids app space right now, and a lot of that has gone over to subscription. So that's a challenge, and one that we continue to explore, but there's a lot of Me Too subscription apps launching at the moment. We're keen not to do that, but we've something in the works in that space, and we'll probably look to do something soon.
The bundles, Apple bundles apps on their app store, they bundle them in.
Sure.
Packs now.
So bundles. We actually recently did a Caterpillar bundle, and it it leads to an uptick in sales. Is it and no cannibalization generally. So it's a pretty good model, but the results can be a bit limited. But it's part of the things that you need to do to get it working. I think it's been a very interesting year for Google as well. We've found that in certain territories, we're actually, like in Japan, we're on a par in.
So you were number one in Japan recently.
Yeah, we've
Big
managed.
in Japan.
We're big in Japan. We've managed to do that thing whereby that stack the states magic of just perma 1 to 5 in the charts. So we're pretty consistently successful with the apps in Japan, but we find that they're working as well on Android, and in general, Android's really up on what it was. Doesn't convert as well, but does great numbers.
I must add that the Google Play and Shazi Makdumi from Google Play Kids and Families is going to be here from tomorrow. So I know she doesn't take meetings with everyone, but if you get a chance to speak with her, she will be at in the Digital Cafe speaking on Monday or Tuesday. I think it's on the program, but it is a platform that I suppose is now growing again. It's a huge platform like Apple's, isn't it? But I think the revenues and the interest in app quality is
building. It's building. I think it's interesting what you say about promotion. Obviously, I think certainly most of the people up here, when we put out an app, we're very fortunate in that there's pretty good chances of being featured on Apple. However, Google always wait until there's a certain number of downloads and your user ratings are above a certain level before they give promotional opportunities. So it means your launch is very, very different on Google to Apple. You don't wind up sort of with a simultaneous, similar commercial levels initially. It takes a little while to maybe get discovered there.
I mean, this is my just one question on discoverability, because it always comes up at every conference. I mean, is it the fact that now there are a million, if we just keep to the Apple App Store, there are a million iPad apps. Of those, I'm not sure what's the quantity of kids apps? 75,000, 100,000?
I would say at least, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, is it that it's become so successful itself that the way you actually search for apps has to change eventually? The store itself is so big that no one searches it anymore. It's almost you have to find a new way in.
I think there does need to be new means of discoverability, and almost a new paradigm in the stores needs to be introduced. What that is, I obviously don't know, but it's at the moment. I think I found the last year I've actually been in general. I've been finding less apps launching that I've been excited about, less really high budget apps launching. I think a lot of people are. In terms of original IP, obviously there's heavy brand presence, and the Disneys, Nickelodeons, etc. continue to dominate. But I think I do think that we're seeing less of those just sort of curveball apps that just sort of are really beautiful, come in from nowhere and do really well. That's not happening quite as much, but there's just so much churn of garbage and mediocre to reasonable content. Anyway, I've taken up more than 2 minutes.
It's okay. So we switch over to the
The slides are so nice because it's Christoph's font. He has his own font, and I used it, Christoph.
Is that charged, Crystal?
Costs by the minute, huh? Be quick.
So I have a special font now on my
Yes, you do. Many of the topics, if you just I've already been there. This is our first finding. It's basically what you're saying too. There's a lot, and the discoverability is very difficult. I think the answer will be individualization. So at the moment, everyone sees the same app store, and that's strange because we have everything individual when it comes to Google. like the websites or something learn what we think is interesting and what we don't, and I think that's what the App Store is going to do. It's going to show more relevant apps to the people using it based on what they've downloaded before. And in general, I think it goes with the next topic. It's not freemium with licenses everywhere. That's obviously a strong driver of consolidation because 2-3 years ago, Nickelodeon, Disney, Lego, Peppa Pig and Co. weren't really that present in the App Store. And the App Store was completely disconnected from the toy charts. So if you looked at what was selling in the book market or the toy market, that was not at all reflected in the App Store. It was like kind of its own ecosystem in the App Store. And now you can pretty much take the Amazon toy charts and put them next to the App Store and you'll have the same brands up there. And they go up there with freemium a lot, with lots of in-app purchase, which then leads to the fact why freemium is on the rise, because the big brands use this as their marketing channels and not so much as their revenue drivers. So they say, if we bring out a new title, let's bring out an app for free to push out the message and to fuel toy sales or film sales or whatever there is. So this is a huge change, because if you look at the toy charts, I mean, it's Star Wars everywhere. Lego is basically taking over the offline industry in terms of toys over the past 2-3 years. And I think something similar is going to happen in the App Store, that it's going to be very, very difficult for indie developers to be up there in the top 10 and just rely on Apple and Google Play to feature them up there. So I think we have to all start thinking about new ways, and this is one way. I mean, Jason in the room and the ones you were mentioning, Valérie, Tigli and Osmo and Co. I think it's not enough anymore to be on the App Store and that's it. You have to kind of think your brand more in a 360-degree way. So how can you have more touch points with the families also in the offline world? Be it books, be it toys, be it educational content. So I think that's one of the answers maybe to this new trend. And the other one is obviously video content. I mean, Toca Boca going into that direction. Play Kids is up there. Probably 20 copycats of Play Kids are right now working on their subscription model. All the big TV channels in France, it's Goldilocks. In Germany, it's Super RTL. In every country, the kids' TV channels are thinking like, why aren't we doing that? So there will be a lot of video content entering the App Store. Oh, and and the third answer to what can you do as an indie developer to stay up there is, well, if you can't beat your enemy, you team up with him. So one of the ways we're going to go is we're going to actually do, like, hopefully apps like Chomp, the 1, 2, 3, and then we'll do one license app. So we're going to basically hopefully show the big brands, okay, you can also do a paid app, which is premium, which has maybe the chance of being app of the week, or which will win prizes, which is not going to have in-app purchase, and which is kind of like a showcase of what you're capable of. Because if you look at their movies, I mean, they want to make the best movies out there, and then they bring out apps which have absolutely no standard of quality. So I think they are also rethinking their strategy in the App Store of, okay, now we, Disney or whoever, has hundreds of apps, but none is really an amazing app. So we hope to play a role in that game of bringing an app as Fox and Sheep for a big license to kind of fuel our cross-promotion sales to the apps which you couldn't be doing standalone because they would just not bring us enough revenue, but which we want to continue doing. Because I very much believe in amazing apps like Nighty Night, Chomp, Petting Zoo, and would love to continue doing that.
Sorry, Verena. Sorry to interrupt. With licenses, are you licensing and publishing under Fox and Sheep?
Yeah.
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 I mean, we found that doing that with StoryToys was a great way to highlight other apps in our portfolio, to just sort of generally bring people into our ecosphere, and that versus making things for Disney or Nickelodeon or whoever, it's a pretty good strategy.
Yeah, we don't want to become an agency. We want to keep our own brand, and I think for Fox and Sheep we have a very diverse portfolio. Like Petties, who has nothing to do with Nighty Night, has nothing to do with Little Builders, so we can easily put an app in there which doesn't match the rest. It's obviously different for Zago Zago, Toka Boka, Wonderkind, Urban Pockets, who have a brand going through all of their apps. They can't suddenly put a license in there. So I think it fits the Fox and Sheep approach of every app is different, but still it is a fine line if you're selling your soul. So that's something which I can talk about next year then.
Watch where your percentages go in terms of original IP versus licensed. You'll see it slide.
In fact, there is a whole licensing hall just across the way from 32 or 31 with
You can hang around there.
well, we're all meeting up on Monday evening for that at the media party. But there is also there is the head of Disney Interactive will be presenting tomorrow afternoon at 3:30. So it will be interesting to hear from their perspective.
Yeah, with Disney it's interesting because they typically take people on as work for hire jobs with maybe a bit of a revenue share, but they are now talking about licensing, and I think the licensing fees that they're looking for are wildly disproportionate with the industry standards, but I think they'll get there eventually.
Right. Well, I mean, I think if we've just spoken a bit, about licensing and other IP, but also, I suppose, connecting up all the dots between, apps, websites, materials, extras. I know a lot of the driving force you'll see in Hall 32 this year is education. Education anywhere, everywhere. People buy applications for kids and for their families to learn stuff. It's a big driver of sales. In terms of that connecting with extra resources or freebies or downloads which are connected to apps or your website, I mean, have you found that you've made any extras? I know, Valérie, of course, for schools, you have a lot of school-focused applications for curriculum, but have you produced any extra materials for teachers yet, or felt
Not yet. And we have the additional problem that freemium apps, so apps that you download for free and then you unlock the content, schools cannot download that. So for us, it means that we have to have two versions of the app on the App Store, which makes it complicated, first of all, from a technical point of view, but also, update everything, and from the consumer point of view, it's confusing as well. So that's something that we've been asking Apple to try and take a closer look at.
You can't host any extras on the App Store, can you? You can't directly host any extra materials. It's just pure app download.
On the App Store, yeah. But like Tigly, for instance, you can buy their physical product in the Apple stores.
Right. I mean, I have seen some. I know from TinyBot has a huge amount of resources in multiple languages for parents, teachers, really introducing their apps in a learning way. I wouldn't say just educational, but lots of things, lots of extras. It creates a communication between those who are interested in learning materials to say this is what we could do in this setting or that setting. I mean, I don't know what people feel about extras that aren't apps, that may be web or simple PDFs or stuff that you get.
We have PDFs in our apps, and we spend a lot of time, and they're high quality PDFs. So we're now looking at how to convert them
and
into...
what can you just say to everyone here what's in there? What do you...
So basically it will explain the whole approach behind the app, the pedagogy, how parents should go about using the app with their child, what we think the progression should be. And often we try to give tips of how parents can go further than the app, outside of the app. So if it's a counting app, give a few tips on games that they can do outside of the app to strengthen what the child's learned. And we also talk about the experts who worked on the app.
Is that okay?
We have a kind of for parents section on all of our apps, but that's as far as we've taken it. We're really challenged, I think, at the moment. They've had some very great help on this. Getting into the education market, I think that's been really, that has been quite tricky for us. I think a lot of teachers, certainly in the UK, are using so much free digital resource that's just kind of available. And as you say, the freemium model, or anything that looks remotely eye-appy, just doesn't play.
We've gone a completely different way. We said there's so much educational content out there, but there's not really a place where it's taught. At least in Germany, you don't have schools really taking it on. So we are actually now building the labs where children can learn digital content, but using third-party digital content to teach. So, for example, apps like Hopscotch or Tinker to teach them coding, and to build physical spaces throughout Germany next to schools, and cooperating with the schools coming to the digital labs to say, okay, let's have our digital teaching there, because we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the bandwidth, we don't have the teachers, and kind of being in parallel with the schools until they start to adopt the programs.
So it's like an after-school club, is it?
Yeah, but it's also in the morning when the whole classes come to our space with their teachers. And
the schools pay for that, or is that?
The schools pay for that, but that at the moment are private schools paying, because the state schools don't yet have that funding, but that's something which is just changing in Germany right now.
So you expect that you'll be able to provide that service in Berlin, where you're based?
Yeah, but hopefully throughout Germany. So we started in Berlin, but now the next city is Hamburg and Munich, and so
and you're doing that with
our partner. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
I think one of the challenges is we're all obviously very busy making apps, focusing on the I guess periphery education materials and focusing on schools can be somewhat challenging. The other downside is, I think, that if you look at the Apple education charts, it's pretty spurious whether there's educational content there or not. It's also everything from university content through to completely non-educational apps for 2-year-olds, all in the same charts, and it's a real mess. And I think that it makes it look like education is not being taken seriously, and therefore I think if there was a better edu store, I think that actually could potentially allow all of us to invest a little bit more in the education side of things.
I suppose again it's a kind of labelling the store just because the kids apps are divided by age only, and in education is it subject?
It's free for all.
It's free for all.
Yeah.
So there's actually not enough compartment.
Granularity for search.
Exactly. I mean, to Verena's point earlier, I'm a university student going in there. Do I really want to see the same educational content as a parent of a 2-year-old?
Yes. And also the fact that national educations are different and systems are different, and it's very hard to sell different content across into curriculum anyway.
It is definitely one of the messier areas. I mean, I know there's the App Store is creaking in a couple of places, but I personally find that's one of the messiest.
I suppose in the world of education what you get is a lot of webby stuff. Web is a cross-platform system that worked very well up to the point when the apps arrived. And apps are very ecosystem driven by different companies. So I think that, we are and I think some of the talks you'll see in Hall 32 tomorrow are about this kind of blended learning, mixed world of paper, apps, web, and it really depends on what schools or local authorities or national governments decide, but there's no one fit. So I think we're seeing some progression in the fact that digital delivery of content to schools will eventually become total. I do see that, you know, textbooks and delivery of things like that will have to come. And I think around cross-curriculum, I think applications sit very well. How they're delivered to schools seems to be still a challenge because schools are different in the way they get to choose things.
Yeah, and curation for it. Delivery and curation.
If I can talk 2 minutes about the French, what's happening in France. So iPads going into schools is political. So each politician wants to have his name in the paper, so he's distributed iPads to all the schools in his district. Then the iPads come into the schools. The teachers have absolutely no training, so they are using them as this thing here. So they're basically boards, and they use them to look at the books that are the PDFs on the iPads. So that's one trend, and it's still true in 2016.
Yeah.
The other trend is teachers who are highly trained and highly tech savvy. They don't use our educational apps. They look for tools apps to make things themselves. So we met with this wonderful teacher who gave a book reading project to her class, and she said, when you're done reading the book, I want you to recreate everything that you can remember from the scenery of the book in Minecraft. Engagement was very high. What a surprise. But so she said, you know, your apps are lovely, but they're already all done. So that's not what I'm looking for. So at the moment, I think we still see both ends of the stick and nothing in the middle, or not enough to make a sustainable business anyway.
I talked about text and the significance of text, and I think that's another real challenge in the context of the education market, because as soon as you go beyond that 2 to 4 year old space that somebody like that Sega Mini is kind of so brilliant at, and you've got those very intuitive things, as soon as you're dealing with things that were like Darren's app, you're in a language-based space, and he had to put text into that app. And actually, I thought it was really interesting as a British person looking at that app, because it says do math. Well, we don't. We just don't. We do maths. We just do maths. And for us, there would be real resistance to that in the context of a British school, because that's like a misspelling. So there's a whole sort of set of issues around language and the viability of producing language-specific stuff for children who are slightly older, I think.
I'm just opening out here to the floor because I think there's
Hi, my name is Ed Nowak, I'm a journalist, and it's interesting to listen to this because I just spent quite a bit of time in Asia and in Korea in particular, and in that system, for lack of a better word, the education system is much more autocratic. Everything is dictated by government policy and standardized, and where they're pouring, I think they have a budget of 20 billion won, or maybe $20 billion to invest in educational app development. It does seem to be picking up. And it's in the more democratized education systems where it seems to be impossible to get the apps into the education system. And that's it's failed in other countries too, though. Turkey was a good example of a country that tried to implement that, didn't work. Brazil didn't work. But it's an interesting, just cultural.
I think that's to Valerie's point about politicians using it in quite local ways sometimes to bring screens to a particular school and get the publicity that involves. And I think that we're seeing, certainly in the UK, a fragmentation, I would say in fact destruction of any centralisation of schooling. So it all becomes on a school by school basis, and they're making the decisions. And these are difficult things for teachers, individual teachers and head teachers, to find bandwidth to deal with, because they've got to deal with children all day and teach them stuff. So I think that it's a big ask in the UK for us to be expecting teachers to find time and energy to embrace this, because it's all so local and individual, and it's really interesting to hear about what happens when will it work in Korea, where it's a much more centralised drive. And that's about a kind of, for us, that's in the UK, that's certainly about a sort of political shift from a kind of left-wing Tony Blair spending a lot of money putting whiteboards, for example, into classrooms, versus a conservative view that's very much about autonomy for individual schools.
Are we presumably talking about Samsung delivering that in Korea?
No, it's actually, there are a lot of independents now vying for that business. Nobody's really gotten major traction, but they tend to have a more isolated ecosystem because of the language.
Okay.
But they're also having some success exporting that to China and Japan, and these are obviously huge potential revenue.
I mean, as we're nearing sort of the end of the panel, have we got any questions from the floor that you'd like to ask our esteemed panelists here? We're then going to have a vote on the printed slides and we'll be given a prize. I haven't shown mine yet because it's here on my slide.
I just wanted to talk about the point that you were touching on earlier about how to find like discoverability of good quality and ethical apps on the App Store, because this is something that we've come up against. We have very strong ethics at Goldilocks. We don't have in-app purchases. We don't have third-party advertising. We work very closely. We're working closely now with educational psychologists, and we're doing everything the right way. But it's very, very difficult. We stood up recently in front of a group of investors because we had a large group of investors interested in investing in the company. And one of their very strong feedback was, okay, you're doing all these wonderful, great things, but how does a parent find that on the App Store? And our weak answer was, well, they come through our social media channels, they come to our website. It's a very weak answer. It's not strong enough. And I think this brings up a really important question about the App Store. You were talking about earlier that everything's mashed in together there. They're all in together. I really feel strongly that there has to be some sort of classification system by the App Stores on, like they classify movies as parental guidance or whatever, but I think there needs to be some sort of classification, and the onus there is on the App Stores that they have to have, some sort of point scoring system or some sort of. I know that as CTR, for example, you're one of the only groups that have started doing this, like actually giving apps a rating based on their, whether there's violence or whether they're ethical and so on. I'm just interested to hear if anybody has any comments on that from the panel.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I think one answer is App Store optimization is becoming more and more important. Apple hasn't really concentrated on that the last years, and now it's kind of rising. So what's the title? Which keywords are in the title? How do your screenshots convert to the icon to the title? So is it all linked to each other? So Apple is looking more and more onto the conversion rate of icon to download or view of the App Store page to download, and is giving that credit in the search field. So an example is our app Little Builders, which has our highest conversion rate. And as well on YouTube, if you look for like apps for kids even on YouTube, Little Builders will be the third app up there. Or if you search in the App Store for Little Builders, we will be right there. Because it's getting more and more important of getting these things right. What will you put into your keywords? How do you put your description text? We run a conference in Berlin called The Kids Want Mobile, and we had a talk there on App Store optimization, which is on the page, which I think sums it up brilliantly. So you can just watch those 20 minutes and follow one by one what he's saying. I think that's the one answer, and the other answer is to cross-promote within your own apps, because that's the only thing you can control. And I think 4 or 5 years ago, or 3 years ago, it was possible to have one app on the App Store and be up there. That's impossible now. You might be featured upon launch and then you just fall down, because you need this constant fueling of your other apps to stay up there, to put one app free, then shove over the traffic to the paid apps again. Like Chomping app of the week right now is a very strong visibility of this app, and it gets a lot of reviews now all over the world in every country, which stay once it goes back to paid. So things like that, constantly doing free promotion weekends or transferring the user from one app to the other is, I think, the only chance you have besides Apple and Google Play.
I'll just add to that, the real challenge is that with the sort of transactions that we're doing, we cannot advertise. So if we had a games company or if we were performing microtransactions, then we would know that the lifetime value of a customer is X, and therefore you can invest Y in marketing to that customer. But because you just have a set small amount, and particularly with low conversion rates, in terms of advertising, you're competing with every giant game manufacturer, every big brand, which pushes the Google advertising prices like way up, and I think beyond what is realistic for the kids app market.
There's just one. Actually, I just thought of one thing. There's one new thing Apple allows you to do. So you're allowed to now use the ad identifier, which was not allowed a year ago. Put that into every one of your apps, but with the sole purpose of knowing which user downloaded your apps. You're not allowed to use it to any third-party marketing or something. And now we have that in every app. So now we see, okay, someone downloaded Nighty Night, and we see a Little Builders download, and then we see, okay, that's the same person who downloaded Nighty Night. We don't know who it is, obviously, but we just know. And so we have a lifetime value for the first time, because that gives you the chance to know, okay, actually people download 4 of our apps in 6 months, so that's €8 net revenue. So we can buy a user for 5 if we have the cash flow, because we'll get it back 6 months later or 4 months later. And that's now the first time you can actually do lifetime value tracking.
Are you starting to see enough data to get a sense of that?
Yes, because it's for the first time that I can say, okay, I can pay €4 or €5, and before it was €2, and for €2 you can't buy a user somewhere. And then if you do, he'll give you 1-star review because he's a 25-year-old student who just got paid for downloading your app or something.
Any more questions from? We'll take one last question.
Okay, I have one question. I'm a big fan of all you in the panel. Really good work up there. Let's all put up the prices for our work so that we can start, earning some money. But what about, we all talk about App Store and Google Play. Amazon, do you find that as an interesting third player? They got Amazon Underground, that kind of, micro payment for plays. Do you have any comments on how that's going?
Amazon is a fairly small store for us. I think it's we find it successful with some of the licensed content because they cross promote to physical books, that sort of thing. But overall, it's not. I think it's probably only Microsoft just below.
Same.
It's the same. The only thing with Underground is that Underground means that you now get like streaming prices. So you give your app for free, and then Amazon tracks how much users were using your app and pays you on that. If that's the way, then we won't be sitting here anymore. Because if that takes over, Spotify is the best example. It's great for Spotify, but it's not great for the artists. So I think Amazon is a huge disruptor in a positive way, but it's also killing industries. And I think Amazon is not relevant at the moment, App Store-wise, so I wouldn't really go for an underground program, which at the end might cannibalize everything.
Can't you end on a happier note, you guys?
No, we're very realistic on this panel. We're the crunching panel. We like to be realistic in this world. But I'd like to thank everyone for coming to the State of the App panel Mark II. Hopefully we'll be returning next year, maybe with the same faces. Maybe we keep this panel forever. But I think we might have to rotate it, including me. I might be somewhere else. But
Disqualify the people we didn't do slides.
well, then Verena does come back for the next 5 years. Valérie gets 2 and you 2 are out. But, and I'm probably out too. No, I'd just like to say there's a whole program for the Digital Cafe which you can pick up afterwards. I think we're now on to some demo bits for the last section.
Sorry, part is demos.
Just one final thing, a better note. While there might be some doom and gloom around business models and trying to, we're all trying to kind of feel our way around what the magic is commercially. It's ultimately still the most fun industry that I've worked in a very, very long time. So.
Great to hear.
Let's give that a